Thanks, Aaron.
As a Canadian, how did you feel about losing Alex Bowman to New Zealand? Are Canadians proud of people like that export themselves out of the country? I mean, he came from QAS anyway, but...
I would say, well, Canadians were very forgiving.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We say, I'm sorry, and that's okay. I'm not sure there was a lot of talk. What I can say is how it was presented was that our wonderful Alex Bowman has been recruited to go and work with. I could throw words like salvage, save, turn around, all those things, but I don't think those words were used, but more proud, a proud son. That's how it was seen. And there's a lot of movement. I think there is in a lot of Western countries, transnational movement of coaches, and so I think it's just something that's accepted. So for example, we have a lot of European football, soccer coaches, and because it's not our sport and we're not very good at it, although our women are really excellent, but they have a British coach, and so I think it's just understood that this happens, and that's something that Canada is very proud of, particularly with our National Coaching Certification Program has been held up as a model in a lot of other countries, and so I think that was just sort of an extension of that.
And what is that? What is it they're proud of?
The
diversity of...
just the development of this National Coaching Certification Program and all the steps. Now it's having its challenges. So I'm saying like maybe 20, 30 years ago, other countries were picking up on that program. So I think Canada is seen and sees itself as a leader in sport in many regards. And so this was just an example of, one of our successful people going away. I don't recall any, I was just a baby, but I don't recall any hard feelings about him leaving and why couldn't we keep him. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question for Keith. We heard from Paul about the model in WA and the Nightfields program, which I think, as someone said, it's probably moved all of us in terms of the power of sport. Do you think that would be something that perhaps could be translatable to any community in terms of setting up, for example, in New Zealand, if there was an area that needed some focus, whether that's a sort of program that could be driven perhaps by a sports governing body at the national level? Sorry to put you on the spot, Keith. I know you're giving me that look, but...
Well, you picked the one presentation that I happened to miss today.
I'm sorry.
What is the Nightfields?
Okay, I'm going to throw that back to Paul. Paul, could you answer that, please?
Yes, it can be. I think what we found with our learnings from our program was that the model and the approach was the key thing. Yeah. So it wasn't so much about the sport, it was more about how we use it. So if I was doing a similar program in Queensland, I'd probably choose rugby, something that's a bit more appealing. Certainly in New Zealand, I'd look at something like that. It was interesting to hear about the challenges around, I guess, the Maori community from the coaching perspective as well, because that's a massive thing in AFL. It's a huge lack of Aboriginal coaches, a lot of players, but then there's not that transition in coaching. So I'm not sure what strategies you guys have towards that, but it'd be interesting to hear.
That's a really difficult one, that one, because it's a cultural thing as much as anything, and it'd be fair to say that Māori rugby in New Zealand's going to undergo something of a bit of a revolution in the next 10 years, because there'll be more resource put into that. There'll be more talent pathways for coaches, referees, administrators. The playing side of things is sort of, it's already a big part of Māori rugby. But yeah, in 10 years' time, I'd like to be standing up here and giving you saying that that's been a complete turnaround. Yeah. Sorry, so now that what is the night field? Is this the dealing with?
Youth at risk and
Youth
the
at
ability
risk.
to use sport to, on a Friday night, bring them together or and off the crime trail.
And whether you could apply that in rugby in New Zealand?
From what Paul says, it sounds like it's very
Yeah.
easily translatable.
Yeah.
For PNG, we had the 2 weeks of the Pacific Games in 2015, and at the very last day, I was sitting in one of the venues just having a drink, and there was about 6 AFP, Australian Federal Police officers, sitting down, and I sort of was like giving them a G up. You should be out there securing places around the venues, and they said, "This is the lowest crime rate we've seen in 20 years up here." It was just because everyone was totally distracted by sport for 2 weeks, and PNG was winning, so they had no reason to go out there and do the things they usually do in society. So it's 100% relatable, but we can't do things after dark because public transport shuts down. No one has transport, and the risk then of the kids walking home or whatever at night time is bad. So we have to use daylight hours, but that exact project has worked for us big time.
I was going to throw a question.
You
Murray,
go.
you can comment on it.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a shame our manager from Cairns, our Cairns office for Queensland Sport and Rec's not here, because there's a really good example in Cairns with AFL Cape York, and they established an academy that it's based in Cairns, but it's far-reaching into the NPA and the Cape York and Torres Strait, and it's for at-risk youth as well, but the communities themselves identify at-risk youth, and then they apply to the academy for like a scholarship or a sponsorship for a number of years, and they go to Cairns for a scholarship through the academy, but they have partnerships with schools as well, so there's a schooling component, so they have to attend school, and then they play AFL as an aside. And I know the only reason they are successful at all is because, I don't know if anything about Indigenous youth, but the biggest issue with them is around family and culture and things like that. So when they're taken away from their communities, there's more issues often than there are in their communities themselves. So they tie them in with family that are also relocated to Cairns as well. And so they've had really good success. They've had some really significant at-risk youth that have been taken from some tough communities like in Arakoon and things like that. No school attendance, they're high crime rates, but then they've been in the academy for a number of years. They do their schooling and then they have outreach into employment opportunities as well, and they're having some really good success. So they've been heavily funded by government, and now they're getting ongoing funding. So their main issue is that some of you guys, the issues with funding, it's 1 year or maybe 2 or 3 years max, but they've secured significant ongoing funding, I think 5 or 10 years, so which is good.
I guess just a question to you to follow up.
Yeah.
Queensland government, I guess we've spoken about bottom up, top down, and we have referred to government quite often on what government is doing. So in your perspective from state government, what are the biggest challenges and issues around community sport that you're juggling at the moment?
Where do we start?
Wherever you're just a few things.
Oh, look I don't know if I can speak at a policy level, at a grassroots level, what we deal with. For us, it's, they're volunteer organisations and they're run, on the smell of an early rag. And that's, in my opinion, largely associated with the not-for-profit terminology. So they all get that label, and so the volunteer committees all come in and it's such high turnover, and they look at that term and they say, well, it's not-for-profit, so we can't make profit. We can't make a profit at all. We can't charge our members any significant amount of money, and we have to do all these hours, ridiculous hours, 6 or 7 people, whatever it is, on an annual basis, and that's how they run. But the reality is they're a business, and it needs to be recognised as such. It doesn't mean not-for-profit shouldn't mean you can't make a profit. It just means that it has to stay within the organisation for the benefit of its members, but that's not how they run. So they're run like volunteer, amateur organisations, which they shouldn't be really. They provide such a valuable service. So that's where our biggest issue is. They've got no resource. So all the stuff that we spoke about, ideally what they should be doing as community orgs would be amazing. But they just don't have the ability to do it, put it on the ground by and large. And unfortunately, their governing bodies are the same. They're not resourced as well as they should be either. So there's a real big gap there in our opinion in terms of the service they provide. And so in my opinion, they should all be charging members far more, and they should have paid staff that can run the business as it should be, because people will pay for it. I'm on a number of committees myself, and we and ah every a few months about raising the fees $5. But there's some sports organisations on the coast that charge $3,500 for a membership every year for a kid under 12s to play sport. And my sports is like $600. And should we do it to $610 or what? We're going to lose members. But you won't, because they'll pay. Yeah. And if they'll pay for the service, so the more they pay, the better service they'll get, essentially. Yeah.
Alison, what are your thoughts on that comment? Bridging the gap, or similar in Canada?
Well, I think that is a challenge. Some will pay, some can pay, but some can't pay.
Of course, yeah.
And so we have to be aware of that as well. But one of the messages that I'm hearing just since I've been here, not just today, but in the past few days. I've only been here for 2 days, and already my head's going to explode. But along with my laptop, is thinking about alternative community sport delivery systems. And I don't again mean cross community sport, which to me could include municipal sport and recreation, schools, those sorts of things, but looking at club delivery. And there's variable demand. We see this very much in ice hockey. I only say ice hockey here, but I did say it in Canada once because I was so used to saying it in Australia. So anyway, ice hockey, which is our national sport, and there's really quite a range in demand. And the same club is trying to offer affordable ice hockey, as well as train the next players heading up through the system to the NHL. And I just don't think that that's possible, and because they're different systems. And Damien presented a very simple model, but there's very, very many configurations within those bottom boxes, aren't there? Many branches. You just had one box, but there's many branches, and so maybe that's what we need to be thinking about. That's certainly what I'm going to take forward in the next few weeks that I'm here, and take home as well, as looking at some of these alternative delivery systems or programming systems, and what can we do. So maybe within the same club we can have the midnight night fields programs, as well as elite development, or maybe they have to be completely separate. I'm not sure. So again, I just pose the questions. I don't give the answers.
Another question here?
Yeah, this is more like a comment than a question actually, because there's a large pool of resources here with expertise from different countries, different areas, different disciplines. I thought one of the things we could perhaps do is really developing, what are the best practice literature on innovations in provision and management of community sports organization. And I think, I can give one example from right in Gold Coast itself. I was doing some research on a master plan community of Varsity Lakes, which is just next to our university. So they built up this sports house. So this was a private sector developer who came and built this community, a master plan community. And as a part of the development, what they did was they wanted to provide some sports facilities for the community. And so what they did was they sold a part of their land to the council, Gold Coast City Council, and the money they got from the council, they used it to build a sports house. And then when the sports house was built, then they had the Varsity Lakes Community Association manage it, and with provision for some commercial activities in it, that they charge some sporting organizations to use their facilities, and so that way it becomes a self-sustaining community sport organization. So if you can find examples like this, not only from Australia, but from all over, and also I think we can, you've started touching on collaboration with Papua New Guinea. perhaps there is potential for looking at best practice learnings from across the world, really, you talk about India and China, it's such a huge potential, I think, in terms of making this and another area where we could collaborate with other countries, actually. So just a thought about doing some kind of collaborative work and drawing the relevance of some of those ideas, both locally as well as globally.
Well, when we set our interdisciplinary research centre up here that the VC promised us, it would be a great base. Thank you.
And we'll fund.
Sorry?
And we'll fund.
Yeah.
I heard that. Didn't everyone hear that? Yes.
Eyewitnesses. Yes, down the front.
Okay, I have a question for Paul. Thank you so much for your presentation and your inspiring program. I hate to be the lawyer in the room and ask the question, but you talked about the difference between, say, your program and then signing on to a club and the registration fees, etc. So one of the differences, of course, would be the fees would pay for an insurance aspect, and also you would presumably have the parents' permission when they sign on to a club. How do you cope with that sort of stuff with your program, the risks that might come of legal liability?
Yeah, sure. So if you had asked me a year ago, I would have struggled the answer, to be honest. But first point of call is, yes, we have our public liability, which covers all of our events and programs. And recently the AFL has just signed on with JLT, which means we're covered for personal injury as well. So that's a massive deal for us. And the JLT series, which used to be the NAB Cup, we'll sit around and why they changed the name. That's because of the sponsorship. So that was a great result for us. But in terms of getting permission, that is a big challenge. So we basically tell the kids they need to complete a registration form. It has to be signed off by a parent or a guardian. A lot of the time it comes back and it isn't. And then we have to get a phone number and we have to call the guardian and say, your kid's here. Do you give them consent and permission to attend? We're going to send them back with a permission form which needs to be completed as well. The other big thing with that is the youth workers who are used to dealing in that area. We rely heavily on them to say, because we say, how do we do it? When the kid turns up and says, I don't have a permission and I don't have a phone number. And that's a real challenge. And then we can't say, oh, we'll go home, we can't participate. So it is a big challenge, but we have got those things in process.
Have a final comment or question to pose to anybody?
If I can just make a comment. I have very much enjoyed the colloquium, and I see I've really enjoyed the different disciplines, and I think one of the comments I'd made was about the language, and we don't always understand the languages in different disciplines, and I think this venue allows for that. So the common focus was community sport, but we had different disciplines from different disciplines presenting that, and I feel really enriched by that. I'm not sure I've been to something like this before, where we actually have lawyers and legal experts speaking. I know you are, because you've said words that I haven't heard before, and I don't hear when sport law comes to the sport management. It's not the same level. Do you know what I mean? And so that's really great. I think it provides a nice framework. You've been doing good things, but I would like to see that extended. And so the other thing I would say, I think the Vice Chancellor made the comment at the beginning, is this really interdisciplinary? Is it, I'm not sure what other, co-disciplinary or multi or something like that. And so I do make the point in the paper that Annette referred to, specifically interdisciplinary means that it's you mix it together. So it's not just side by side. That is multidisciplinary. I say my thing, you say your thing, we listen and we go away. So we're enriched by those disciplines, but interdisciplinary is coming together. So it's me, when I'm looking at researching organizational capacity or innovation in community sport, then I actually bring in the legal discipline. I understand it. I come to understand it. What does that mean? See, I've even forgotten the word now. Some comfortable satisfaction. Is that what it was? Comfortable satisfaction, right. So what does that mean, and how might that be used in what I'm talking about? So rather than saying, oh, I heard this interesting word, now back to my very watered down version of law in community sport. Well, no, let's learn from what is actually there, and we combine that together. And that can be very difficult, very challenging, but I encourage everybody here, if you have learned something from another discipline today, then don't just say that was interesting and go home and that'll somehow come into the radar. But next time you have an opportunity, bring that in, and maybe it's even the topics I talked about, like mental health. What does that mean actually? Because I think we're dealing with that here. So I'm going to learn more about mental health, and I'm going to bring it into what I'm trying to understand in my own context. Or concussion, the comment, well, what is concussion anyway? Well, let's find out what is concussion, not use the word loosely. Let's bring that in. So I think this has been fantastic. I've been pleased to be a part of it, and I would just encourage all of us to try to make what we take away from this interdisciplinary, not just multidisciplinary where we've got these different lanes, but let's cross into the lanes and maybe we jar each other around a little bit. But I think we'll be better for it in what each of us does.
I think that's a great closing remark from this conversation, and a good segue into our next activity we're holding here at Bond. So Lottie, who we've heard from today, is behind our anti-doping research and regulation, and we have world experts coming here to give facts. So people from WADA, AIS Chief Medical Examination, there's lawyers coming, and a lot of other guest speakers. So if you want the program, more information, it's on the website. We'll speak to Lottie outside now and get some more information on this, but this will be a great event. I'm going to hand over to Annette to thank speakers and close today.